Hi, my name is James Betz. I'm the author of this book here, Ralston Heights. I have a poster of it behind me, but since throughout the duration of this video I'll be obstructing it, I thought you'd have a chance to see it while I speak about the content. Okay, now Ralston Heights is a supernatural horror story, but it's predicated on the history of the Ralston Castle of Hopewell, New Jersey, which is a small hamlet just a few miles north of where I grew up. I've been familiar with it my whole life, but I was never familiar with Ralston Heights, or the Ralston Castle, if you will, up until a few years ago. And so it inspired me to investigate the history of this place because I heard, there was a lot of hearsay about the original owner's racist and bigoted intentions, but I wasn't aware of it until I investigated it myself. So I'm going to jump right into the nature of my story, what it's about, and its connection to this here Ralston Purina Breakfast Company that once thrived among many other thriving breakfast cereal companies who actually all strangely have a lot in common. But I'll get to that in just a few minutes here. Either way, Ralston Heights is a 2020 supernatural horror novel predicated on, as I told you earlier, the Ralston Castle of Hopewell, New Jersey. Now, a lot of people don't know where Hopewell, New Jersey is. It's a small town located just north of Princeton University, that area, about half an hour north of Trenton. And it's in a very rural, but at the same time beautiful section of central New Jersey, and most prominently the Sourland Mountain region, which are just a series of foothills that have geologic prominence to them. Either way, that's a whole other story. But either way, Ralston Heights is a supernatural horror story that I wrote. I published in March of this year, but I was obviously interfered with by COVID, so I didn't get to promote my book nearly as much as I anticipated the past few months. So now I'm averting to technological conveniences such as YouTube, Facebook, all that. And yeah, I just want to discuss my book. So my book is about a 19-year-old named Trevor Marino. Although my story is fiction, it's based on the true history of Ralston Heights and its prior owner, Webster Edgerly, who lived there in the late 1800s till the early 1900s until his passing in 1926. But either way, I'm just going to talk about I'm not really going to talk too much about him or his life. I'm really going to more talk about what he planned to do with this property and how it inspired me to come up with this supernatural horror novel. So, Webster Edgerly, who was born in Salem, Massachusetts in 1852 to John Foss Edgerly and Rhoda Lucinda Stone. Now, when you think the name Ralston, you think it derived from someone's actual name, because the Ralston sound, it sounds like a common surname that some Americans would have, and that's not true. The name Ralston derived from Rhoda Lucinda Stone, who was Webster Edgerly's mother, and he took the letters from her name, Ralston, and formed this acronym that was supposed to be the central theme for his Ralstonism cult. And each letter stood for something that was a prominent concept in his overall ideology. Ralston, Ralston. Regime, activity, light, strength, temperation, oxygen, and nature. Now, this all sounds crazy, but at the same time, the history was discovered by this woman named Janet Six, who was living in the house while earning her doctorate from Penn. And she found an old magazine that connected Webster Edgerly with the Ralston Purina Corporation, but there was no evidence, or very little evidence after that, connecting Ralston Purina and Webster Edgerly, because due to his strong racist and bigoted beliefs against non-Caucasians, he wasn't exactly, his Ralston books obviously did not age well, and so that is something that kind of almost went extinct, except for if it weren't for the efforts of Janet Six, who discovered all this history. I've never had the opportunity of meeting her, but hopefully we'll get to someday. And either way, Ralston Heights is this, I would say it's this interesting chunk of land just along the border of Hopewell Borough and Hopewell Township on Greenwood Avenue. It's privately owned now, but at the time he lived there, there were gardens, there were he decorated it the way he wanted his utopian community to be, because the whole purpose of Ralston Heights was to build this utopian city called the Ralston City with curved paths. He believed that all humans should walk in circles on the balls of their feet without stopping. He thought walking in straight lines caused a vital leakage of force, and stopping while walking. He had very strange, odd theories about health and perfectionism and just general self-improvement. He was deemed a guru at the time, but in hindsight, it's honestly both hilarious and terrifying. Like, obviously the science of 100 years ago is laughable to us now, but 100 years ago, who knows what people will think about what we believe and what we know so far, especially in the midst of COVID and all that. But, obviously that's not worth speculating on right now. So, yeah, in 1894, between 1894 and 1896, Webster Edgerly started buying a whole bunch of farmland in what now today is known as Ralston Heights in Hopewell, New Jersey, because he perceived, he believed that this special but surprisingly undeveloped, or I don't even know what to call it for its time, because I didn't know what it looked like there. But to this day, it's very quiet and very secluded. There are neighborhoods there, but everyone's very quiet. It's a prosperous community, but at the same time, it's not very noisy over there. But either way, when you drive through it, it just gave me a whole bunch of inspiration and imagination to think, if this were part of a horror story, I just couldn't hold back but work on the story. All the information I learned about it spawned an obsession, and then there was an article published in May of 2019, and that was the catalyst that made me want to write an article. And then there was an article published just a few weeks ago about my book. Here's me, if you want to see it. Here's me. And here's the article. There's another page. Here's the actual castle in its prime, back when Webster Edgerly was there. Here's Webster Edgerly himself. I know he looks like a sinister W.B. Mason, but I guess looking like the Monopoly guy in its time was, stylish, if you will. But that's pretty passe, as you can obviously see. And here a little excerpt from my book and all that. But you can find that article on US1 Princeton Info. It's called Hopewell's Stranger Than Fiction Castle Inspires a Novel. And there's a picture of me at the actual site, Ralston Heights. And if you buy the book, which if you're interested in reading it, in the very last page, it'll show you about the author and a picture of me with the castle in the background. But, that's only if you want to read the book, which I can confidently tell you has an insidious plot buildup that will probably and hopefully scare you. Yeah. Well, Ralston Purina was established in 1902. It was originally established about a decade prior by William H. Danforth, who was an admirer of the Ralston beliefs in the Ralston Health Club, which is what it's called. If you see here, if you look real closely on this ad, it says Ralston Health Club on each one of these boxes. Because before it was Ralston Purina, it was just the Ralston Health Club. And it was a health-based organization, not a breakfast cereal company. So in the late 1800s, 1898 specifically, Webster Edgerly endorsed William H. Danforth at Purina Mills so that William H. Danforth could start marketing Ralston breakfast cereals under the Purina name. And the idea was so successful that 4 years later, in 1902, the company's name was changed to Ralston Purina, the Ralston Purina Company. And that company thrived throughout the 20th century, and even later on went to own the St. Louis Blues hockey team, and which they played at the Checker Dome. I think this was in the 70s or the 80s, but either way, Ralston Purina definitely was a prominent American company, especially in the field of breakfast cereal and pet food. But then things changed in the 90s when there were mergers and acquisitions, and Nestle, now it's known as Nestle Purina, and Ralston's known as Ralcorp, but it's a lot of their cereals were bought up by General Mills, and it's just completely different. than it used to be. But either way, is a lot of people don't know is that Ralston was not based off of someone's name. It was based off of a bigoted organization that sought to create this utopian shrine just a few miles north of where I grew up. Now, I was so blown away by all this information, I had no choice. No, I obliged myself. I had no choice but to go forward with it. And I was already writing another novel in between, which I still have yet to publish. That I'll get to in another video or in future videos if people are interested in hearing more information about it before I get it published. But in the meantime, there's a lot of things I'd like to talk about related to my book, and my other ideal is to form a hybrid between my favorite book genre concept, which is supernatural horror, and historical fiction. And that's exactly what this book is. It takes place in 2019, this story. And all this Ralston activity went on in 100 years before the main character lives in the area. Even longer before that. Because Webster Edgley, unfortunately, well, he was eventually run out of town in Hopewell, New Jersey, back just years before he passed away, because he built a defective reservoir that contaminated the town's water supply, and they were extremely unhappy with his redevelopment efforts for this supposed Ralston Ralston Heights utopia that obviously never came to fruition. The only thing that exists is his castle and a few and the whole land in the Sourlands just north of his castle. There's just a few foundations for a few buildings out in the midst of the woods, but none of them reached fruition, and that's as far as they ever got. So the fact that this was just so incomplete according to his standards made me conceptualize this disturbing but nevertheless entertaining supernatural horror story that I wanted other people to learn about, because I felt that this is a criminally overlooked history lesson, and it was sobering to go through these books and read what this guy had in mind. Like for instance, in one of his books, he calls Ralston Gardens of Life, under the pseudonym Edmund Shaftesbury, he had a whole lot of pseudoscientific and racist beliefs, but the whole main goal of his was to build this, racially pure utopian city, which this is an illustration of it in one of his books. So this gives you an idea of what exactly he had in mind. Curved paths, prestigious buildings, tranquil, beautiful gardens, meadows, just this, he basically wanted to build a scientifically proven Garden of Eden. He thought that he was, a messiah of some sort with this Ralston brainchild of his. But it was, for the time, just nothing short of pseudoscience and bigotry, I guess you could say, in a nutshell. But his ideas for the racially pure utopia never reached fruition, and so that's why I had no choice but to draft this concept and brainstorm this concept for a supernatural horror story where the Ralston entity isn't quite as obsolete as the history lesson provides you with. And so that just gave me too many ideas to let go of, and so I implemented that here in this here story. Okay, yes, and like I said, I have there are going to be other videos where I can talk more about this and my upcoming projects. But all in all, if you are interested in reading Ralston Heights, I would be more than happy to sell you an autographed copy. I'm doing distribution all myself, so you can go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can go check out my Facebook page for Ralston Heights. And yeah, other than that, if you're interested in supernatural horror history and somewhat of an interesting fusion of the two, I think I have something interesting to offer to you. So yeah, just hope you have a pleasant evening, and yeah, I hope to hear back from potential fans, prospective fans in the near future. Thank you, and have a good night.